Okay, in this lesson, I want to show you how to start building a 12-bar fingerstyle blues improvisation in A, beginning with just one lick. So I'm really into this idea that, when you look at soloing on the blues, or on anything really, it can look like a lot of big, wide open space, a lot of blank canvas. But if you start breaking the big picture down into smaller pieces, you can have more of a roadmap through the chord progression. And in a way, the chord progression almost tells you what to play. So you combine that with the idea of taking one small lick and seeing how you can develop that idea. And those two things put together takes a lot of the panic out of improvising, because now you've got some boundaries and you've got some rules for how to take an idea and expand it. So if you want to download the example that I just played, you can go to the link below or the link on screen, and that'll let you sign up for my newsletter and download the tab for this lesson and for a whole lot of other lessons on my YouTube channel. So the idea is we're playing on a 12-bar blues, which you can immediately start to divide into the 3 lines of the blues, which is not that hard to think about if you think about the way blues lyrics go, right? Like a blues lyric typically has an opening line, and that lasts over the first couple bars. And then at the beginning of the next line, you repeat the same phrase. And then at the beginning of the third line, there's kind of the answer or the punchline. So a lot of people think of that as an AAB form. And so we can look at the chord progression the same way, right? So we're starting off in the steady bass with an A chord, going to D over F sharp for a bar, and then back to 2 bars of A. And that is the first line. That's the first A. Then for the second line, we would start on D over F sharp for 2 bars, and then come back to 2 bars of A. So that's our second A, like our second line. And then the final line, the answer, would start on E. And then in this case, I'm going to do a split bar of D, back up to E, and then come back around and play 2 bars on A again. And that's the whole form. But now, instead of thinking of it as 12 bars, we've got 3 groups of 4 bars. So that's kind of the first step in getting all of this sorted out. Now we can take one simple blues lick and look at how to use that as the nucleus of what we're going to do, as the main idea that we're going to take through this whole 12-bar progression. So the first thing is to think about the way the phrase is going to land at the very beginning of the form. So a phrase like this actually starts before the chord progression starts. If you're thinking, you're counting yourself in with 4 beats, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. You're actually playing a few notes before you even get into the tune. And the last note of the lick is going to land on the downbeat of the first measure. So again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And the thing about the blues scale is that the blues scale you can always make it sound like it's coming back home to the 1 chord. So if you're out here on the D chord and you played the same kind of lick, you could use it to come back to the A chord and it would sound pretty good. But if we just play the same thing twice in a row, it's not that interesting. I mean, it's cool and it works. works, but it leaves a lot of space. And we could actually go through the second line the same way. All the way up to when we're going to hit the turnaround or the E chord. But what we can do to create some variety and to create some development is we can take that first lick and we can make it longer. It's the same idea, but it's just stretched out. And so we need to start it further back so that it still lands when we get back to the A chord. So we've got this. And then on the D, we're still coming into land when we get back to A in measure 3, but we're starting further back. We're starting on the and of 1 in the second measure. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So now we have this cool little call and response, right? We've got, that's the call, and then the answer is, and this answer is kind of built out of the same basic stuff, right? There's our first lick, and then that's kind of a shorter version, and then more stuff added on and elaborated. But I'm just using notes of the blues scale, the root, the flat third, the fourth, and the flat 7 down here. So now we've got the opening line. And we've still got a bunch of open space. So maybe we want to put in like a chord filler or an answer. Because if you're thinking about the way blues is sung, there'll be this opening phrase. You know, like every day I have the blues. That's kind of the equivalent of. But then, you know, something will happen as an answer. And if someone's singing, then usually the answer will be instrumental. If we're doing all the playing ourselves, we want to create some contrast. So maybe something like a chord lick, you know, or a double stop, right? So here I'm just half stepping my way into the notes of an A7 chord. I've got the flat 7 here, and I've got the third here. And so I'm coming in. And again, I'm kind of trying to land, you know, to anticipate the coming bar. So this is the first bar, the second bar. And then I want to sort of think about coming into the fourth bar, right? So if I was going to really just do that, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1. But that's a little square, so I'm anticipating and playing 4 and 1. So measures 3 and 4 are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3. And then I've got time to play my next phrase. I can come in on the and of 3, and I'm going to start the second line. So now I've got the whole first 2 lines basically worked out just from this one opening lick. So I've got. Chord answer, and now I'm going to start again. Only this time there's a sense of contrast because now I'm landing on the D chord with my short lick. And then this longer lick is taking me back into A, and I'm going to answer the chord again. So from that one idea and a little bit of development, I've got my first 8 bars so far. So now it's time for the last 4 bars, which in one sense is, you know, we use the term turnaround a lot of different ways, but one sense of the turnaround is the last 4 bars, the thing that's gonna, it's the first time you hit the 5 chord, and it's the thing that's gonna ultimately wind you back around to the 1. So we're coming into the turnaround, so we wanna maybe play a slight variation on the short lick. Instead of doing that, we're gonna come back to the root to give us kind of a launching off point. Now, so far, the licks have all landed on the downbeat. But here we're going to sort of extend the lick into the measure. So we're kind of delaying the resolution. The idea is you want to kind of resolve or land on a chord tone of whatever chord you're coming into, because that feels satisfying and like you've arrived somewhere. Here we're going to kind of delay that resolution. Landing on an E for the E chord, yeah, but playing a little bit more before ultimately landing on an E. So, and now we're going to hit a D chord and an E chord, but we still want to land back on A. That's where we're heading. So now we're playing new stuff, but we're staying within the same basic sound, a blues scale. And we're changing direction, so that creates contrast. And so putting this lick over the D, in terms of just the A blues scale, we've got the root, flat 7, 5, flat 5, 4, flat 3, root, flat 7, and root. So it's just coming straight down the scale. But it sounds cooler because it's being put over a couple of different chords. And I'm grabbing the flat 7 of the D chord in here too. So index is grabbing the 3rd string and ring is grabbing the high string. So, had to think about that for a second. And then we can answer one more time, like that. So we put that all together, and we have this. And notice how that lick starting on the D still lands on the downbeat. It lands on the downbeat of measure 11. So it's still resolving. It's still starting sort of out front of where it wants to land. And then it's landing at the moment when the chord progression returns to the 1 chord. So there's a lot more nuances to all of this, but the basic idea is you start with something simple, and if you have a way to think about the form of the tune, to take the blues, the 12-bar blues, and divide it into those 3 lines, and then within each line, look not at where you are, but where you're headed. That's what will give the solo a sense of direction, right? Because there's nothing worse than that aimless feeling of just like, well, I'm playing blues and I'm filling up space, but it doesn't really sound that musical. The simple licks, if you play simple licks, but they have that sense of direction, that sense of landing, then everything suddenly feels like you're leading the way through the chord progression instead of getting pushed around by the changes, right? So you can start with something else, and you can do the same kind of thing. So if you've got a simple phrase like that, let's say, now you just have to find another way to do something with it. That's kind of an answer. Right? And so you've got another place to go. And you don't have to answer with this double stop. You could answer with, or something longer, It could be a more elaborate answer. You could, and you could also take some of that space and fill it in with some, a little more elaboration on the bottom end, with the bass. So the idea is just to have this skeleton, this kind of way of going through the chord progression and get comfortable taking small ideas and expanding them through the 12 bars. And then you can start to dress it up, in those different directions, like with different answering chords, with different bass lines, with different licks to begin with, all of that. So once again, if you want to download that opening example and download the tab, just go to the link below or the link on screen. And if you want to find out about other lessons and other upcoming workshops that I'm doing, you can go to fretboardconfidential.com for information about that. And drop me a line below if you've got any questions, and I'll see you next time.